Welcome in, friends, to Betting Pros. It is the college football early line look for conference championships. Regular season, peace out. You're gone. It's conference championships. And guess what? We're breaking them all down. We've got early line looks. Is there some value? I'm going to give you a teaser. There was one right as the show started. Thor was like, I had to hit this quick. And you might want to hit this quick because this line might be a moving. We'll be talking about that and more. We got Eric Foton. We got Thor Nystrom in the house, CFF Foton, and Thor KU. Gentlemen, we are in the conference championship time. Thor, everybody's fired. They're all gone. How was just a quick little 30 seconds on the end of the regular season for you? How was this final week of betting and just everything that was college football? Whoa.
Not seeing his audio.
UTEP, and UL Monroe. And that list will be added to here in the next 24 hours because, like I said, these coach firings are still coming in. So a very interesting time between that conference championship weekend next week, and then we'll get the playoff field set and our bold dance card for the next month.
It's Foton. It was a wild weekend. You know, one of the better games of the entire season. Michigan, Ohio State, everything. Tables being set. Any final thoughts on the regular season betting, props, anything from that perspective?
Yeah, we just closed out the season-long props, and that's always a yearly, feeding fest at the trough. I know that Thor and I were both sweating Malachi Corley and Carson Steele, so we went one-on-one in those.
Foton, how many text messages did I send you last night after midnight with the Carson Steele under? We Foton and I, we had a lot of money riding on. Carson Steele just had to go under 105 or 106 yards because of our season-long, a vested interest on that. I was sending Foton run-by-run updates on Carson Steele. I was like Brian Fontana in the Panda Cage in Anchorman, and it was Carson Steele updates every 2 minutes of Foton.
Riveted. I mean, there was nothing but 100% focus on the color of the hair coming out of the back of the helmet.
Correct.
From whoever's lining up in the backfield alongside Dante Moore. So fortunately, we ended up hitting that. That was big, but he was under 900 and a half rushing yards, and Corley was 999 and a half receiving yards. He missed one game all season, and that threw us off. Be careful. Lesson learned. Be careful when you're betting overs when it comes to season-long players.
And then they yanked him at halftime against FIU yesterday. Yeah, because they were beating them by 2 by just ripping our hair out about that one. But
they were killing
we
us.
digress.
We thought that they would have some motivation against FIU for them to get the 1,000-yard barrier for Corley. No, they didn't care about us.
Only so many more weeks we're going to be able to rip out our hair, and it won't be to the same degree of those beautiful Saturdays. But what we do have coming up here is we've got conference championship. We've got all the games. We've got the early lines. That's what we're going to be breaking down here. So just know, I guess it doesn't matter necessarily now, but we've been rocking it live, bettingpros.com, youtube.com/bettingpros. If you guys have wanted to see the videos, and the last couple of weeks we've been live, but on the podcast as well, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss anything. Gentlemen, let's get into some conference championship games, and we are going to go to the USA Championship, Conference USA Championship. New Mexico State, who finished out 10-3, 7-1 in the conference, going up against Liberty, who's 12-0, undefeated in the conference, obviously. And this early line opened up over on Betting Pros. We've got all the early odds that you guys want to check out. It'll show you where the lines opened, where they are now. It's the place to be. We've got a Liberty minus 10.5 early line. So Thor, talk to us about where your system opened this bad boy up, and if there's a bet you're trying to get in right now.
Yeah, my line on this game is Liberty minus 11.9. This game is in Lynchburg, so it's a home game for Liberty. 4 of these games, 4 out of the 10 conference championship games, are at one of the teams. They're all the 4 of the 5 G5 ones at a home field. There, all the Power 5 ones are on a neutral. So just something to keep in mind. Whether you bake in the home field advantage, whether you don't. But in this one, we do. It's an interesting handicap in that the Fighting Jerry Kills just keep overcoming all circumstance, keep winning over and over again. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, obviously they had the rousing upset of Auburn, who absolutely should have beaten Alabama yesterday. The most ridiculous ending to a game I've ever seen. We'll talk about that in a little bit when we're breaking down the SEC game. But then, and that was it. That game, then New Mexico State on the same day, they turn around, play Jacksonville State, a team who is not allowed to play in the Conference USA title game. So that was where Jacksonville State had all their eggs in that basket. New Mexico State didn't have much motivation in that game. You wouldn't have thought, because they knew that they were locked into playing this game. And New Mexico State still beats them. So they just keep doing it over and over again. This is another one where it doesn't appear to be the best matchup for New Mexico State, just like last week. I mean, I was on Jacksonville State, and the state of reason was New Mexico State's run defense isn't great. And just like Jacksonville State, Liberty has an awesome running offense. Can Jerry Kill and New Mexico State overcome circumstance again? They're going to have to here on the road in this game. But again, they just keep doing it week after week after week. I don't know if I can fade Jerry Kill again. My system says there's ever, the slightest amount, a dollop of line value on Liberty right now as we talk about this on Sunday. I'm going to have to dig more into this game. I've gotten skittish fading Jerry Kill.
Foton, according to Betting Pros, you can take a look at the game odds. This opened up at 14, at least on the U.S. books here, and we've seen a pretty big, pop down. We're down to 10.5, so it's a pretty big move from where it opened. I don't know if you've got any other type of line movement, some of the offshore stuff like you've mentioned, but what do you think about the line movement and what's your play here?
Yeah, in fact, the line movement here, circa, so Las Vegas is biggest and the sharpest book in the world, opened it up at -9. It's at 10.5 right now. As you mentioned, the domestics opened it up at 14. So this is certainly a domestics versus Vegas discrepancy in this line. Getting up to the 10.5, which is closer to circa, obviously, going from 14 to that. I tend to agree. What I really like is 55.5 or somewhere in that mid-50s range for an over-under, because, I mean, what these two teams do is they score points. Caden Salter, Diego Pavia, both of them in terms of the college fantasy realm were very, very sought-after, highly sought-after quarterbacks. For his part, Salter was a top 10 scoring quarterback, Pavia top 20. So both of these, they have very capable signal callers. And where you look at Liberty, as Thor mentioned, they also have Quentin Cooley, who is one of the top 10 rushing, running backs this year in terms of production. They give it to him early and often. He's rode hard and put away wet. I actually like the over in this. I don't think either defense is going to be, I like Liberty, don't get me wrong, but like you said, New Mexico State will find a way to score. And if you like New Mexico State to win, I think they're going to have to outscore Liberty. They're not going to stop them, in my estimation. So that certainly points to an over sort of game script in my estimation.
And I forgot to mention at the very top, the cool thing here, we get to split these up a little bit. This was a Friday game, and we've got one more Friday game we're going to move to on these conference championships, where we are going to the Pac-12. Say goodbye, Pac-12 championship. Oregon, who's 11-1, 8-1 in the Pac-12, going up against Washington, undefeated across the board. Oregon opens up as a 8.5-point favorite, Thor, with what looks like a total of around 67.5. So per usual, is there a bet you want to jump in quick? And what is your adjusted line telling us about this game?
I'm not gonna jump in today on this one, but I'm gonna be monitoring this line pretty close because if it happens to hit 10, I'm not anticipating it, but I am gonna wait for it and just see. I'd be hitting Washington then for sure. I think some of the hype around Oregon is starting to go a little far, and I think some of the fading or some of the pessimism on Washington maybe is going too far the other way. I watched all the Apple Cup, and I was on Wazoo. I took the points. That was a unique scenario where Washington was obviously looking to this game, and Wazoo, was going all out to try to beat them. Whatever. Wazoo was trying to get into a bowl game too. They were 5-6 in that one, and the jilted lover their last game in the Pac-12 and everything like that. Whereas Oregon, they had what not on paper was the easier assignment, but it turned out to be playing Oregon State because as we came to find out after the fact, not only had Oregon State's head coach, Jonathan Smith, decided in advance of that game to leave right after it for Michigan State, but basically his entire staff had too. So that week in advance of that, they were negotiating their contracts. They were talking about their plans to move to East Lansing. They were evading media questions about it and trying to, word it, in a flowery way, whatever. It was very clear that Oregon State was not prepared for that game, and Oregon did to them whatever they wanted to. Washington, the thing that has impressed me about Washington this year is they can win in numerous different ways. They can do the shootout thing, but then in games where, they don't have their fastball as far as like the aerial offense goes, they can slow it down with the running game. They can play some better defense, and they can try to win. They've won some of these lower scoring games as well. I like Oregon, but I just think that this line getting up near double digits, I think it's going a little bit too far. My projected or my system's line is closer to a touchdown in this game. So I'm going to be waiting and hoping that this thing hits 10. I'm not expecting it, but we got some days here, in advance of this game. So I'm going to be waiting and monitoring this thing.
So, Foton, this one is really interesting because it did open up around 7.5. The best line, if you go over to Betting Pros right now, you can see FanDuel as we're recording this 8.5, but there's 9s. There's 9.5s, and there's a book or two that has got that 10. So this is all over the place in the early onset. So what say you? Is that total going to be in play for you? It's a Pac-12 matchup, of course, but is that line getting juicy one side or the other?
Yeah, like you said, you've seen at the time of recording, this is a completely unsettled market when it comes to Oregon. Open at -8 on Circa. If you can get it that low, I mean, that's a pretty good deal. When it comes to Washington, just another tightrope walk over Wazoo, 24-21. They've had 8 straight wins of 10 points or less. 6 of their last 8 has been 1 score or less, with Penix. Of his last 2 games, he's completed 31 of the 61 passes, just a shade over 50%. He has not looked like the world-beating Heisman contending quarterback that we saw of the first, I'll call it 8 games or so this year. They were outgained by Wazoo. They only put up 306 yards, against Washington State. Their run defense is really what I think could hold him back in this matchup. Ranked 98th in terms of performance, 61st in EPA in terms of the overall defense. And when you're dealing with Oregon, obviously, they've been dominating everybody since losing to Washington, going 6-0 with a 99% win expectancy plus in each game, averaging 42 a game, only allowing 18. In terms of offensively, they can't be stopped. They're first in offensive success rate, first in points per drive, second in EPA and yards per play. And even their defense, 15th in EPA. This is just a more complete team in terms of Oregon. I actually kind of feel like when, you have a second meeting with these two teams, especially the way Washington has been playing, I think you're going to get less points than what we got the first time around. It's a pretty high over-under at 66.5. I lean Oregon if you can get that -8 and the under, as the Ducks just try to, salt the game, just try to lean on that Washington front that just has not been able to stop people on the ground.
Friday Night Lights, the end, 2 games there for you for some conference championships on Friday. Moving into Saturday, how about the big dog? There was a tease earlier. Maybe it's about this one. The Dr. Pepper Big 12 Championship. Oklahoma State, who's 9-3. 7-2 in the Big 12, going up against Texas, who is 11-1, 8-1 in the Big 12. And we have seen, I personally, on this sheet, I've been like, delete, delete, because this one just keeps changing since I have been working on this bad boy. I've got 13 currently for this game, with a total of a best line of 54 over, with a under of 56, and that is movement off of what it opened at. So Thor, I teased it a little bit earlier, so I'm throwing it back at you. If there's a little bit of line value, Texas, Oklahoma State.
Yeah, and I got an update from what we were talking about, the Pac-12 title game. There are a few books where that thing is now toggled up to 10, so I didn't have to wait long.
Yep.
Yeah, it's juiced odds, and it's only at a couple of them, but the other ones are all uniform at 9.5 now. So it appears the market is pushing that one that direction. That's where I'm. That's where my head is at. Is the Huskies at double digits? So we'll continue to monitor that one. But yeah, as for the Big 12 title game, this was my first bet of the week, and I made a healthy one when I saw that opening line opened at 11.5. I didn't see it there. I was running my numbers earlier. When I saw it, it was 12.5. So that's where I punched my bet in, punched it into the Betting Pros app earlier today. If you follow me on there, turn your notifications on, you'll get my bets when I put them in. And because I knew that thing was going to go 14, maybe 14.5 by kickoff. My line on this game is Texas minus 14.9. That's the objectively fair line, not 11.5, not 12.5, not 13 or, at this point now, I put that bet in an hour and a half ago or whatever. 13.5 and 14 across the market. And like I said, that thing's going to keep moving. I would guess kickoff, it's going to be 14.5 or 15. Oklahoma State is and this is contextually, this is coming from someone who was higher on Oklahoma State than just about anyone else over the summer. Because number one, I love Ollie Gordon. Number two, I thought Alan Bowman was going to be a better fit in that system than other people did. Number three, their schedule was terrible this year. You won't see a Power 5 team play a softer schedule than Oklahoma State got to play this year. And the one tough game they played was Bedlam. And, they were fortunate in that game. They won whatever, they won a coin flip. They were on the right side of a coin flip. They avoided Texas this year. And that's the only reason why I think this line drop was under 2 touchdowns. Texas is not only way better than them, just, objectively, qualitatively, everything like that. They are also a horrific matchup for Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State has one trump card. That's Ollie Gordon, their running back. Their entire offense is get the ball to Ollie Gordon in every which way possible. Hand him the ball over and over again, then get him the ball outside, try to throw him the swing passes, everything like that. You've seen them racking up around 200 all-purpose yards per game during this run they've had ever since the calendar turned to October, these last couple months. Texas might have the best defensive front in college football. If it's not, it's number 2. It's either 1 or 2. And it has insane depth, too. You turn on any Texas game, the announcers will talk about they have 2 starting defensive lines on that team. But the real number 1 unit, those are all guys. It's like the Georgia ones from the last couple ones. You're going to see all those guys over the next 2 draft classes. It's going to be a procession of first-round picks and second-round picks. The same thing as we saw with Georgia. And they're so smart about the way they do it. They run a 4-2-5, the run funneling stuff. They have these 2 planet-sized guys in the middle. The one everybody talks about is Sweat, the kid who's like 6'4", 350 plus, and an athletic freak. But he can occupy at least 2 guys. The other kid occupies guys. The 2 ends keep containment. And then they have these crazy athletes at linebacker that just fly around. So they rarely have to delineate defensive backs to come up because they can take care of the run just with those guys. They can manhandle you at the line of scrimmage, and then the linebackers are going to clean everything up. very, very bad matchup for Oklahoma State. They're not going to have that, even when, Ollie Gordon, I think, is going to be dealt with. And then even when they try to do the play action stuff, that then they try to get off of the Ollie Gordon going deep. I don't think that's going to be there for Bowman either. I think Texas is going to be able to flip the field on them. Like I said, this line should be 14.5 or 15. It's going to be there very quickly. This one is all Longhorns all the way.
Your boy has already made that bet. That is the bet that I locked in right before we started. Couldn't even go live until I made sure I got that bet. Foton, it kicks back to you. Total, it's a little bit wishy-washy moving around. Obviously, this line is a quick move-in. Are you in agreement with Thor here that you want to hit this bad boy now? Or do you have a counter argument?
No, I mean, I totally agree with his assessment, especially about the Texas run defense. I mean, keep in mind that they graduated Moro Ojomo and Keontae Coburn, from the interior to IDLs to the NFL that were just absolute beasts as well. So just the amount of depth they have on that defensive line and the way that they've snuffed out the run game this entire year has just been incredible. And like Thor said, with Oklahoma State, Alan Bowman, a 10-11 ratio, touchdown interception, a 17-20 big time throw to turnover worthy play rate. This is just an average, retread on his third team signal caller. But Ollie Gordon is the man. I mean, he's number one in the country in 15 plus yard runs. He has 29 of them. Number 2 is 23rd. That's RJ Harvey for UCF. So, I mean, he's significantly higher than the rest of the field, but with Oklahoma State, I mean, they're going to have to try to stop Texas as well. I mean, and they're 109th in EPA per play allowed. They're allowing 6.5 yards per play. That's 102nd out of 133 teams. Versus the pass, they're 98th overall. They're allowing 8.7 yards per attempt. That's 125th. So, they're just bleeding all over the place, this particular, defense. Oklahoma State, completely agree. Texas destroying everybody besides Oklahoma, 66% win expectancy or more against every single team on their schedule. Give me Texas.
And I think that the last point on this, and it does bear mentioning, what is it? The day after is when the college football playoff is going to announce their field. Look at what we got right now. There's a golden opportunity here for Texas to make a statement, and they're going to want to, and they're going to need to. Right? Like the Pac-12 title game is more or less an eliminator. And then Texas, they want to lock down or nail down their argument over Alabama, which they should have the trump card in that thing. But you don't want to have any doubts creeping in if you beat Oklahoma State by one possession and it doesn't look, like it's like, you sneak by them or whatever. It's a close game, whatnot. They have every incentive in the world to crush Oklahoma State. And by the way, an argument potentially against Florida State, with Tate Rodemaker and all that stuff. What if Florida State beat, the line of the Florida State game? We're going to talk about that one in a second. But over Louisville, what is it, like 4.5, 5, something like that? Close spread. What if Florida State wins that game in a super uninspiring game and they win by like a field goal? If Texas comes out and absolutely annihilates Oklahoma State, you're going to have the public banging the table for Texas to be put in over Florida State. You want to give that committee everything that you can to have the second thoughts about that to try to put you in. They're going to do that.
Style points matter, right? And it opened up at 11.5. It's almost an unbelievable line, almost.
Thor mentioned it just a tiny bit ago, and I would just promote again that he locked in the bet on the Betting Pros app. Make sure you do as well. Go and download the Betting Pros app on iOS or Android because you can follow your favorite people and you can also get notifications when those bets are set. Now, this didn't matter, but I just would like to point out that Thor's hammer last week was James Madison. And if you go and look, and you see the line that he got and then what it was on Saturday, you'd be like, oh, I'm sick to my stomach of how big of a line difference there was. It didn't matter because they blew it out, but you can get those notifications if you're following Thor on Betting Pros. Plus, you can check a billion other people. You can not only follow your favorites, but you can have specific line movement and notifications, certain types of bets, props, totals, overs, spreads, whatever it is. It's a completely customizable app that you're going to want to check out. So download it today. Betting Pros on Android or on iOS. Go and do that bad boy. All right. Jumping back into these games here, we're going to move over to the MAC championship. Miami, Ohio, who's 10-2, 7-1 in the MAC, going up against Toledo, who is 7-1, undefeated in the MAC. And Toledo is a 7.5 point favorite. So Thor, 7.5 points. Is that going to do it for you for Toledo? What do you like in the MAC championship?
Yeah, these are teams that are in two different classes here, two different weight classes ever since Gabbert went down for this season. Now Miami got to play a different way. The line, though, is more or less fair, being over a touchdown. My line's around there, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to take it with Miami of Ohio. They have been able to. I'll give the Chuck Martin credit. I do like Chuck Martin, their veteran coach. He's able to keep the games closer, which would be a data point, obviously, with where the line is. But qualitatively, again, it's a fair line. The kid that they've had playing quarterback, this Avion Smith kid, we've seen him plenty over the last couple of years because Gabbert gets injured all the time. And what the offense devolves into when Avion Smith comes in, he just scrambles around. And then they have like 6 different running backs. It's like, one guy gets a carry, then he runs off the field. Another one comes in and, they do it like that. The receivers aren't, great or whatever. It's just sort of a ho-hum kind of offense. And then they try to play the field position game and play salty defense, whatnot. On Saturday, they snuck by Ball State 17-15. And now you're playing the team that's the class of the MAC. Then again, Toledo has more talent than they've how do you say? They haven't been winning as impressively over this procession of awful teams in the MAC. The MAC, which just got picked apart by all the vultures in the transfer portal last offseason. Toledo was the one team that sort of avoided that. Toledo had most of their guys back. They should have just been eviscerating all these teams they played, but they've been playing some of these teams closer. So I realized that I just talked myself in an entire 360 on this handicap. I'm going to be getting deeper into this one this week because Miami of Ohio is the team I respect, but I just wonder if they have the ammunition to stay in this one. Whereas Toledo is the team where I like their talent a lot more. I don't like their coach. And by the way, the last thing I'm going to say about this, all these jobs have opened up. We talked about that at the top of the show. You're already starting to hear Jason Candle's name tossed out for some of these things. If a Power 5 team hires Jason Candle, they will be setting their program back a minimum 5 years. That guy is not a good coach.
Foton, we have not seen a whole lot of movement in this game, and the total opened up at 46.5, and the total is 46.5. So I'm not sure this game is really getting touched a whole bunch. Is there anything that you like out of this Toledo 7.5, 46.5 on the total?
Thor, it seems to me like you've been living life like Jason Candle in the wind. When it comes to Miami, nasty defense. That's what they want to do. As he mentioned, 10th versus the run, 23rd in passing performance, 28th in EPA per play. They're only giving up 17 a game, but it's all because they're 133rd in pace. They call a play every 31 and a half seconds. That is dead last in the entire country. And, it's pretty easy to say why. You have a run-based offense with Avion Smith. They'll essentially just do the run, and then they'll toss one downfield in a one-on-one matchup and try to, make something happen. But they're kind of built on explosiveness to move the ball. But on a down-and-down basis, 38% success rate, 112th in the country. That's brutal. And they're playing it just like a well-oiled Toledo machine, just a balanced offense. 14th in EPA, 47th% success rate. That's one of the top 10 in the country. 12th against the pass. They have Kenyon Mitchell. We have arguably the best defender in the entire G5 playing quarterback for them, cornerback. They've only had one game with a sub 75% win expectancy, and that was week 1 against Illinois, a Big Ten team. They went on to just absolutely destroy every other team in the MAC. So it's really hard to pick against Toledo, and I do lean a little bit under. We're in the mid 40s or so where this is currently lined, because I just don't think Miami's going to be able to do much. They're not going to be able to throw on them. I don't know what they think they're going to do, and if you're going to be one-dimensional and just try to run essentially the veer, well, good luck with that. So I kind of like Toledo in the under.
So the game where they played before, we have a couple rematches this week, and This one, they played October 21st, Toledo and Miami, and the game was in Oxford. Toledo won 21-17. That was the game where Gabbert got injured. Pretty sure Avion Smith came in at the end, but Gabbert played most of that one. Toledo ends up winning 21-17 in that one. So they were able to keep it closer. But again, Smith is going to play the full one this time. So this is where you're going to get the full Chuck Martin experience of what Foton's talking about the grind it out. And
it's going to be ugly.
Between plays for Miami, you can go to the bathroom, do your taxes, cook dinner, and put the children to bed, and you'll be there for the next play. That's the way that they play, and they want to get 3 yards per play, and we're just going to move ever so closer to the sticks. That's the way it goes. Can they grind it out? That's what the handicap is.
We might be able to speed a little bit through this one, going over to the Mountain West championship game, because we're still trying to get information on this. I think this one just kind of got locked in. Boise State going up against UNLV. Boise State 7-5, 6-2 in the Mountain West. UNLV 9-3, 6-2 in the Mountain West. And we were able to snatch a line. Boise State 3.5 as a current favorite. I don't have a total line. This hasn't dropped up on Betting Pros yet, but this is one of our quick early ones here. So maybe there's a speed through here. Is anything you like out of this one, Thor?
Yeah, well, this is one that wasn't decided on the field. It was decided in the gigabytes by the computers, by the computer rankings. It's like a hearkening back to the BCS days. You almost get nostalgic. The kids out there watching this, they don't remember what that was like, getting the computer rankings and everything like that. But good for the Mountain West for kicking it back to that. We had a 3-way tie that, again, decided this morning, that was forced yesterday by San Jose State, upsetting UNLV. UNLV had the best computer ranking. That one we knew. That the question came down to San Jose State against Boise. Boise ends up edging them out a little bit. And Boise State is this one's sort of the tale of two opposite teams coming into this. UNLV was a team that no one believed in coming into the year. They fired their staff before. Nobody thought they were any good. They hired Barry Odom, the longtime defensive coordinator, and he'd been an SEC coach for a little bit, failed, was fired. And then he had hired Brennan Marion after he tried to hire Bobby Petrino. Petrino accepted the offensive coordinator job, left 3 days later, because Texas A&M hired him the job. Then they hired Brennan Marion, who has been an absolute revelation, is going to get offers for bigger OC jobs, maybe even a head coaching job. San Diego State
will be getting one. Yeah.
It's been rumored.
Head coach for a big OC job. He's gone.
Yeah. Brennan Marion has this offense he invented from scratch called the go-go offense, which is so fun to watch. So people need to tune into this. He has 2 running backs in the backfield with the quarterback, not a running back and a fullback, 2 running backs, and they do all this misdirection stuff, and it's very fun. But they exceeded expectations in a crazy way. But then they got upset last week by San Jose State. Boise State is the opposite. They did a whole bunch of dopey stuff over the offseason. The biggest one was hiring Bush Hamden, who doesn't know his you-know-what from a hole in the ground. Bush Hamden decided to neuter Talon Green, who was one of the best players on the roster, by telling this dual-threat kid from Texas, Talon Green, you can't leave the pocket anymore. So all of a sudden, his game went away. He wasn't viable anymore, not the best thrower yet. So then they started playing this backup, Maddox Madsen or whatever, who's just a mediocre, like a run-of-the-mill kind of kid. Boise State played way down. It cost Andy Avalos his job. And just when it seemed like the building was coming down and everything, and all these guys there was all these rumors about everyone entering the portal and everyone was going to leave. Will they even reach the end of the season? Is there going to be a mass mutiny? Boise State fires Avalos, maybe to even keep the roster together for the last 2 games. Maddox Madsen gets injured in the third to last game, which allows Talon Green to take back over the job, in the immediate aftermath of Avalos getting fired. Talon Green now has led them to 2 straight wins. That was in conjunction with Aston Jeanty coming back from injury. So they have now Jeanty and Holani, the best backfield in the G5, with Talon Green back. And they've let Talon Green start to do Talon Green things again. Boise State wins the last 2 games. And because of all this craziness, including Air Force going into the absolute tank, Fresno State goes into the tank, Boise State somehow forces this tie, and they edge past San Jose State to get into this game. Boise State has all the momentum in the world now, with just sneaking up into this game. this could be an ambush spot, like in this crazy sort of way, this overlooked Boise State team that is playing way better, I think, than people think, because they were left for dead a long time ago. UNLV better not overlook them. You wouldn't think they would, but it looks like they overlooked San Jose State last week. I might be leaning Boise State in this one just because they've been playing so well in recent weeks. The resurgent zombie Boise State Broncos.
Foton, where's your lean on this bad boy? 3.5 on Boise State. Are you as optimistic in riding that wave as Thor is?
Yeah, well, I mean, my gosh, this Boise State team, as you talked about, all the tumult going on within the program, but the offense, legit, 9th in rushing. This is what they do. Taylon Green, dual threat quarterback. You have the dual threat running backs, George Holani, Ashton Genty. 23rd in success rate and EPA, 19th in yards per play. I mean, this is a legitimate, powerful offense that I think can impose their will on a pretty stock and trade UNLV defense. That's not what they do particularly well, as Thor mentioned. But on the other side, with Boise State, their defense, which has always been a hallmark of the Broncos, they always have a stout D. Linebackers getting drafted. Last year had multiple draftees. JL Skinner was in the secondary. He got drafted. So in terms of Scott Matlock, defensive tackle, this has always been a great defense. They stink this year. They're 89th against the pass, 79th versus the run. In terms, especially against the pass, and this is playing right into UNLV's hands. 8.5 yards per pass allowed. That's 124th in the country. 115th in yards per play in general. I mean, I don't see either team really being able to stop each other. As you mentioned, you got Brennan Marion. They have the 9th ranked pass offense in the country with the go-go offense. I don't think Boise State's going to be able to stop UNLV through the air. I don't think UNLV is going to be able to stop Boise State on the ground. And I think you're getting an over here around that 56.5 or so mark, depending on where it is at the moment.
I agree with that. It's a sneaky one, too, because these are run-first teams, but I agree with that take.
Beautiful. Going over to the SEC, here's a big game. You teased us a little bit earlier, Thor. Georgia, undefeated across the board versus Alabama, who's 11-1, but undefeated in the SEC. Georgia is a 4.5-point favorite. Our total opened at 56. It's sitting around best line 55. Under, if you want to play at 56.5. So that has kind of maintained. Thor, Georgia, Alabama. This is going to be a highly desired bet game. What side are you playing?
Yeah, I'm hoping that we get some more bets on Alabama, because I would like to back Georgia and lay it, but this line is right around where mine is. My system's line in this game is Georgia 4.7, so we're right around where I'm at with it. I'm not we talked about this all season long. I'm not a believer in Alabama. I cannot believe that I was sitting there last night, how many times in my head that I had cashed my under 11 Alabama win total ticket. I probably did that like 4 or 5 different times this season. And every single time that they pulled the game out of their obviously they lost the game to Texas earlier this year. There's so many times, it was like week after week, they were on a precipice of a loss. The Auburn game, that was a loss. That game was over. I was already counting my winnings on that thing. And I had to watch the replay of that 4th and a mile to see exactly how Alabama, when Auburn dropped 8 guys, because that's what ended up happening.
Rushed 2 guys.
Rush 2. But there was one guy that was one guy was like in no man's land. It's like, why are you spying Milroe when he's not going to run 30 yards? Just put the 8 guys on the goal line, whatever. But how did they get one dude in the back corner of the end zone at 1-on-1? I didn't get it. Right. It's like a math thing. Like how did that even happen? So I watched back, and Alabama did this crosser stuff. And then there was like 6 Auburn defensive backs that were like congregated by the goalposts. We were just like hanging out and chatting and just watching Bond, go 1-on-1 with this other poor sap who was like, oh no, I'm about to be on posters and hated by Auburn's fan base the rest of my life. Poor kid. And Alabama pulls out another one. They're not going to be so lucky this week. Georgia, we talked about the Georgia Death Star, the Michigan Death Star. They are on the inevitable crash course to meet each other. Alabama's not going to do anything in this game to stop that. Georgia used last week as a de facto bye week. In their win over Georgia Tech, people who just casually look at the box score that didn't watch that game, they're probably like, oh, Georgia also just barely got by, a mediocre opponent that's around as good as Auburn did, without realizing the context. Georgia did not play a whole bunch of guys that were, maybe 95% or 90%, right? Like Brock Bowers, who had missed, the 3-4 games before that, they brought him back to make sure he was healthy, but then they sat him the last game because you want him ready for Alabama. They sat Ladd McConkey because his ankle wasn't 100%. They sat Ra Thomas. They sat Tate Rutledge. Wasn't the only guys. They said, because they knew they were going to beat Georgia Tech anyway. Georgia's going to be 100% healthy in this one, whereas Alabama just got out of this rock'em sock'em raucous thing. They're putting the grave digger and all this nonsense. They're crowning themselves after this game they pulled out of their butt because Auburn's defensive backs don't know how to play the prevent defense on 4th and a mile. This one's Georgia all the way. I'm just waiting for the line. So this isn't going to be a bet for me today. I'm hoping that I can get this thing at 4. 3.5 would be a dream. I highly doubt that the market's going to be that generous to me, but I'm waiting for the line on this one.
Foton, is there anything you're waiting for or anything that you want to hit today in this Georgia-Alabama matchup?
Well, like Thor said, Georgia just absolutely ran over Georgia Tech this past weekend. 262 yards, average 6.7 yards per carry. And schematically, they only threw 20 passes to 39 runs. If you look at literally every single other game that Georgia's played, the minimum was 25 passes that you saw from Carson Beck. So, I mean, just that's all they cared about doing. It was their fewest. I mean, they were just there to run over Georgia Tech and go. As discussed, Bama just looked absolutely terrible against Auburn. I mean, I don't know what you really want there. And they got everything that went their way. 3 turnovers, 44-24 run pass. They were able to run the ball, to a pretty decent extent too on Auburn. Like, are they going to be able to run the ball against Georgia? I really don't think so. So this is going back to the Nick Saban teams where you had Derrick Henry, and you had a stud running back, a Mark Ingram that you could rely on. Well, that's not that's not this team. It isn't Jace McClellan. So I got to say, I certainly favor Georgia in this match.
And Kirby Smart and crew, they're not going to allow Jalen Milroe to just do his run around for the 100 yards thing, right? Like, I mean, he stole a lot on the broken play concepts. Kirby Smart is not going to allow that stuff. They're going to force Milroe to stay in the pocket and beat them from the pocket, and they're not going to have 6 guys congregated around the goalpost on the concepts where they need 30 yards to get the play. So, yeah, I think Alabama's in trouble here.
We got 4 more games here. We try to get through here. American Athletic Championship, SMU 10-2, 8-0 in the American. Tulane 11-1, also undefeated in conference. Tulane is a 3.5 point favorite we're seeing early on here. So, Thor, what's your adjusted line looking like in this game?
Yeah, this one, this is my second bet that I made today. I bet on Tulane. I wish I'd done it a little bit earlier. I was waiting for a text back on something I will discuss here in a second, but that was informing the amount that I modulated the power ranking of one of these teams. I needed to hear about the status of one very important player to this line. And when I got that back, the line that I settled on here is Tulane minus 4.2. If that player, if I thought he was playing in this game, SMU would be favored in my system. I don't think we're going to see him in this game, and I don't think we're going to see him again this season. We'll have to see on that. There's been no public announcement. His injury did not look good on Saturday. I'm talking about Mr. Preston Stone. SMU was up by 1 billion points over Navy. And at the very end of the first, this is the unfortunate thing. There was like 30 seconds left in the first half, and almost assuredly Lashley was going to take him out at halftime because SMU does pull the guys pretty early. And Preston Stone suffered what appeared to be a pretty serious ankle injury. They had to cart him off. And not only that, it was one of those things where like the head coach makes a point to, take off his headset stuff, walk over to the kid, put his arm around him, before they take him off on the cart and like whisper things in the ear. it does not look good for Preston Stone, which means that SMU is going to have to go to their backup quarterbacks almost assuredly. Again, whenever you hear this, check updated news, whatever. We don't have anything official yet, but that's what it appears that the tea leaves on this thing. Kevin Jennings, and then is the backup who would likely start. And then his backup is a guy that I know well, Alex Padilla. The Iowa transfer. Yeah, wow. Who we got to see at a bowl game a couple years ago because of opt-outs and injuries. And Alex Padilla is not good. Kevin Jennings, presumably slightly better, but neither of them are in Preston Stone's stratosphere. So you lose a whole bunch off that SMU offense. Well, that's what SMU's good at. They just outscore people in large part because of Preston Stone and the Stone Age. They still have a good running game. But if the passing attack goes away, or if it's severely neutered, which is what you would think in this game, that's going to make it really tough against Tulane. Tulane can do different stuff. That if Preston Stone was healthy in this game, I might have gone the other way. In fact, I probably would have, because Tulane has been without two of their top receivers, and that has affected Pratt. Last week, they were able to scratch and claw, win out against UTSA, even though Pratt only completed 9 passes. Because they've been playing good defense. They found a running back, this Makai Hughes guy, who was like 5th on the depth chart going into camp.
Yeah, freshman.
But he's just like, he runs hard and, different stuff like that. So they've been able to manufacture a running game. Again, they play good defense and certainly experienced, and they're awesome at home. You look at the against the spread records of teams over the last 5 years at home, 10 years at home. Since Willie Fritz got to Tulane, they have been incredible at home. Now they're welcoming SMU in and a backup quarterback. This is not a good situation for SMU. And by the way, this could be the last game for Michael Pratt. Michael Pratt has already accepted his Senior Bowl invite. We would have to see if Michael Pratt would play in the bowl game if they win this game and then they are the New Year's 6, the G5 New Year's 6. It's going to be between them and Liberty. They are very close in the college football playoff. One of them will presumably be picked. We'll have to see on that, but those guys are going to want to go out with a bang. I don't know if there's been a decision made on that, but especially against SMU's backup quarterback, this is not a good scenario for them. This one's Tulane all the way.
Foton, is it all the way for you? We also got a total 50.5 to 51.5, pending what side of over under. What do you like out of this?
Yeah, it's interesting. It actually opened up at 54.5 on the total at Circa. So you've seen that trending down because of this very news. I mean, I understand how you can back SMU. Thor covered it succinctly that with this situation, you can't take their backup quarterback against a Tulane defense that already ranks 24th against the run. And you're going to go out and throw a backup QB against them now. So you can't even really run the ball against them. And they're just going to, that's bad news against this team. And like with Michael Pratt, I drafted him in my 20-team college fantasy football dynasty league. I feel like Thor and I have watched him grow from a boy to be a man.
Sure have.
Over the course of his collegiate career, a lot of adversity, and easy to root for Michael Pratt. So
we always will.
All behind Michael Pratt for an incredible collegiate career, and Tulane. You can't take SMU. If you do, you are a degenerate of a cut from a different cloth. You're taking SMU with a backup QB against Tulane at home.
All right, let's go to the Sun Belt Championship. Appalachian State 8-4, 6-2 in the Sun Belt versus Troy 10-2, 7-1. Troy is 7-1 in the Sun Belt. If you didn't get that, Troy is a 6.5 point favorite. Thor, what are your thoughts on this one, and what your adjusted line look like?
Both my system is right there with Vegas on both the spread and the total. My line is Troy minus 6.8, and my total is 52.5, which is right there with where Vegas is as well. This is a tough one for me. I hated this Appalachian State team the first month of the season, and I thought that their coach was going to get fired because they were playing so bad, and then they had this crazy turnaround. Like now they're playing awesome. It's like a turn back the clock to the old Appalachian State teams. I don't know what was said or done. It's not like anything, changed with the personnel or anything, but they've been a totally different team the second half of the season. They're really coming on strong. Troy's the team that I've liked from the start of the season. That was my favorite team in the Sun Belt. So, if I have my druthers, they would be the team that I would back, but there's no line value here. This, if there's one game I'm probably going to avoid, to be this one, because Appalachian State has all the momentum, but Troy they're the old guard here. They've been in this spot before. They have the good defense. They have the good running game. They have the veteran quarterback and the veteran coaching staff. One thing to keep an eye on, John Summerall, the coach for Troy, there's been a lot of chatter. If some of these dominoes start to fall in the coaching ranks, John Summerall could be one of the guys that the Power 5 teams look to plug their hole. So we'll have to see as the week goes on if that's something that picks up. But this is probably going to be a stay away for me.
Foton, is there anything that you want to touch in this bad boy?
Yeah, just the quarterback for Appalachian State, a wild man, Mr. Aguiar. That guy is something to watch. He really has been a catalyst and a big reason why they've kind of bounced back. But he is a wild card, in terms of he actually leads the country in turnover-worthy throws, but only has 8 interceptions. It's like a 24-8 ratio. He has had an innumerable amount of bad throws that have somehow not landed in the opposing team's arms. But, whatever works for that. I just have concerns about his freewheeling kind of ways against a Troy defense that has been lights out. Everybody talks about James Madison, but Troy's defense has been right there. If they're not the best, they're the second best group of 5 defense, I think, that I've seen this year. And having him, sort of chucking it up, that he's not going to be able to get away with that against Troy. The only factor that has me giving pause, as Thor mentioned, John Summerall is going somewhere else. They've been too good this year, Troy. He's his body of work is too impressive. He's gonna go somewhere else. Where is the motivation of this staff? Because a game is fine at this point. It would be nice, but these guys are thinking about, all right, where am I coaching next year? Because these guys move around all the time, these assistants. So that is the pause I have in this game. So I'm kind of staying away.
All right, ACC championship, Louisville 10-2, 7-1 in the ACC, going up against Florida State undefeated. Florida State is only a 3.5-point favorite. The total sitting between 51 and 52.5 from best to worst, pending what side you would want to take of the over/under. So, Thor, what's your line looking like for this one, and why is Florida State this low? Is this too low of a number, or did your system say anything bigger?
No, it's not too low. I'm kind of smiling here because on Sundays I'm going to miss doing this show, and I'm also going to miss just betting on Sundays in general and betting college football in general. But on Sundays you're always playing cat and mouse with the market. In addition, you got your numbers, you have your takes on the teams, whatever, and then you see the lines drop. And we've talked about this in past episodes where it's not just your conviction on that. You also have to do the 3-dimensional chess thing of, could a better number be available for me if I wait, right? And the reason I was smiling was because, when we started, 30 minutes ago or whatever, this line was at 5.5, and I really like Louisville. I think Louisville is going to win this game, and I got a little greedy. I thought, I'll wait till the end of the show, and maybe there's some dopes out there that are going to bet Florida State and just push it. Just, I only need just a little bit more to get 6. Right. And so that's what I was waiting for. And then I checked back, and in most books now it is dropped to 3.5.
Thor.
Fortunately, there's still some books where it's 4.5. So I was able to punch in my 4.5, but did get a little greedy there, but it's Louisville all the way here. I don't care that Louisville lost last week. I was on Kentucky. I was the guy saying that's a look ahead spot. They're looking ahead to Florida State. Kentucky's live here. I had money line ticket. I had the 7.5 points. But Louisville they're a solid team. They can do multiple different things. They have the explosive running game. They have the 2 different running backs, Jordan and Garendo. Plummer, the veteran quarterback. And then people don't realize how good their defense is. They have the pass rush, very good run defense. And that is the thing that is important for this matchup, because Tate Rodemaker stinks. Confirmed over and over again the past 3 years. I don't know why Norvell did not go out and get a veteran backup quarterback in the portal. He absolutely should have. It was the only thing he did not hit on his shopping list or whatever. And then it was confirmed against Florida as well. He doesn't give you a mobility aspect either. So he's sort of a sit and duck back there. Louisville's run defense is going to be able to put the clamps on a Florida State running attack, which is played down this year. I know Foton agrees with me on this. We thought Florida State's rushing attack was going to be way better. It didn't matter when Jordan Travis was playing because it was Jordan Travis and you had Keon Coleman and then Johnny Wilson when he was in there. And you had Joaquin Bell motioning around doing Joaquin Bell things. But we thought that, Foton, we both thought Trey Benson was going to go nuclear this year. And then you had Toafili and then, but the running attack hasn't been great this year. I would prefer Louisville's run defense to Florida State's rushing attack, in particular, since you don't have to worry about Jordan Travis. I think this spells problems for Florida State, and I think Louisville absolutely bounces back here. Again, this is the game that they were looking ahead to when they no-showed last week. Think about Auburn no-showing the New Mexico State game because they were looking ahead to the Alabama game, and then the fight that Auburn had against Alabama. I think it's the same one here. I think Louisville wins and gets us out of our national nightmare of having to confront Tate Rodemaker in a college football playoff game.
All right, Foton, are you going to echo a lot of what Thor just said? Are you on Louisville as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to Tate Rodemaker, too, 12 of 25 for 134 yards, a 48% completion rate, 64.4 NFL passer rating. I mean, that is about as bad as it gets for him. And career-wise, it's not like he's been any better anytime he's come in. Career 57% completion rate, 6 to 10 big-time throw to turnover-worthy play rate. And just the team that played down to what you'd expect them to do. Florida State, 4 for 14 on third downs when they knew they were going to throw. Like Florida State couldn't throw. 224 total yards they put up. Like they masked a horrible performance against Florida by just squeaking out a win. If they didn't actually win, I think this line would probably be even right now, honestly, just because of the whole perception of it. Like you said with Louisville, they didn't commit. Kentucky played a clean game, 0 penalties. Louisville committed 3 turnovers and still outgained Kentucky 403 to 289. So like their Pythagorean win expectation is way up there. But I mean, Kentucky played a clean game and they executed. Barry Brown, took a kickback. Just everything. Look ahead spot. Everything pointed to this sort of happening. I hate to be in lockstep with Thor, but I have to agree. Like, how do you take Florida State right now? Give me the 3.5 points, hopefully 4.5, but just give me all the points I can get, and I'll ride with Louisville against Tate Rodemaker.
Just one other thing contextually here. Over the career of Rodemaker, I know Foton was going into a little bit, but just a couple more. Rodemaker over 4 years at Florida State, he's thrown 118 passes, 5 interceptions, and he's taken 14 sacks. And again, he doesn't offer you anything with his legs. Negative 17 career rushing attempts. This year, his stats look a little bit better because 32 for 56, and he has 5 touchdowns against 0 interceptions, whereas he entered this year 2 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. But all of his passing attempts, it was either garbage time against teams like Southern Miss, Wake Forest, the Corpse of Pitt. But then the bulk of it was the last 2 weeks against FCS North Alabama, which is not just an FCS team, it's a bad FCS team. And then Florida this past week. We had a big fork sticking out of their back. 5-7 Florida, who's now home for the holidays. They ain't going bowling. Tate Rodemaker is not good. This Florida State team is not good with him in at quarterback. It's Louisville all the way.
All right, final game here, what you've been waiting for. Big Ten championship. Michigan undefeated across the board versus Iowa, who's 10-2, 7-2 in the Big Ten. Michigan is a 22.5 point favorite. And the best thing about it is looking at that over total line, which looks like, I just had it up here, it's 35.5 to 36.5, whichever side you want to play. So implied scoring of just under 2 touchdowns for Iowa on that line. So there might be some fun stuff to dance with here. Thor, what are you dancing with? Michigan 22.5, and that total has got to be screaming something.
Yeah, looking at a total of 35 for an Iowa fan, it's like when you open the check with your paycheck and it's like double as much as you usually get, and you're like, wow. I mean, like these past several weeks, I've been, 25.5, 27.5, 28.
24. We got down to 24 last week.
Oh, that's juicy. And Iowa's been going under every single time. It's 35 this week. Obviously, the bookmakers are expecting Michigan to be doing most of the heavy lifting with where this line is. And I would expect that as well. Iowa's in trouble here. Iowa can do the grind out thing against the teams that stink for sure. But as this season's gone along, and credit to the coaching staff, who's always great and everything like that, and they got to 10-2, they were able to grind it out and everything like that. But as things have gone along, they have lost so many key guys to injuries, right? Cade McNamara, Luke Lachey, Eric All, and then recently they lost Cooper DeJean, who if not for that, and maybe even still will be a top 10 NFL draft pick, a do-all guy, safety, cornerback, nickel guy, punt returner extraordinaire. If they hadn't taken his punt return away fraudulently after the fact when they were reviewing for something else, Iowa would be 11-1 and not 10-2. I digress. Kirk Ferentz was talking about that after the game, so I had to get that in. But you're talking about a severely depreciated Iowa team that obviously they have the horrific offense going up against this Leviathan Michigan team. Something to keep an eye on Michigan. Michigan did get Roman Wilson back in the last game, so that was good news for them. Their wide receiver one. However, they did lose Will Johnson to a lower back injury. Will Johnson had a big play in the Ohio State game, but then he got hurt right after that. They also, very big loss for Michigan, lost Zach Zinter, their All-American guard. Might be out for the season with a leg injury. He had to get carted off. Michigan's offensive line, we talked about this, sneakily has played down a bit this year. Zach Zinter was about the best that they had. That's something to keep an eye on for after this game. I don't think Michigan is going to have any problem with Iowa, though. But more or less, that this is a fair line. Iowa's just going to try to shorten the thing and keep it more or less around here and not get embarrassed, whatever. I'm not sure that I'll bet this, but I don't know that I could take Iowa.
Foton is, I feel like the total is screaming for you in one direction. You're a totals guy here. So talk to me. Is there a bet that you do want to place on this game?
Yeah, well, as Thor said, Zinter being out could be a factor because Ohio State outgained them 378 to 338 total yards. They are 129th in pace of play and first in overall defense. So like they are happy to just maul you up front and try to do that with Zinter out. I mean, that does present a little problem. With Iowa, though, I mean, my gosh, big Deke energy.
Yeah.
Deacon Blues. They call Alabama the Crimson Tide. Call them Deacon Blues. That's probably the last time I'm going to get to use that. But a ghastly 1-14 big-time throw to turnover worthy play rate. That is as bad as you can possibly get.
For a 10-2 Big Ten West champion, Foton.
Yeah, and he's here. 10-win team. In his defense, 16.5% drop rate. That is far and away the highest drop rate in the entire FBS. Do you know who who has the number 2 highest drop rate, Thor? You'll understand why when I unveil his
Minnesota?
name. Ethan Kaliak-Manis, number 2. Yeah. And even him. So both your teams, horrible hands, as it turns out.
I don't have nothing to do with that.
No, you don't. No, you
don't.
Just
I need something nice, At least Kansas got some guys that can catch.
I know, Kansas does. So at least 1 out of 3 ain't bad. But with Kaliak-Manis, even with him, number 2 in the country is still at 13.9%. That is a full 2.5% less than Deacon Hill, to show just the cavernous gap in terms of the quality of play of not just the QB, who has a 46.5 PFF passing grade, but of the guys he's throwing to aren't any good either, as he mentioned. I mean, their 2 best players were all in Lachey. They're gone. They're gone for the season. They're not coming back. It's like this is a extremely deficient offense. So, and that needed a last-second field goal from Thor. I can't believe we didn't talk about this. Marshall Meter.
Oh, yeah.
Marshall Meter. His first field goal attempt of the season.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
They asked Ferentz about that after the game. Like, why did you bring him in for that? And Ferentz like, I felt good about it. He was, he looked confident in the pregame, all that. It's like, what?
Felt good. Late 38-yard field goal with time pretty much, expiring, essentially. He hits a 38-yard field goal in his first attempt of the season because Kirk Ferentz, that's how he rolls. Because he doesn't care. He's already
vibes,
in
baby.
The Big Ten championship game.
Right.
He doesn't matter to him. Whatever. So, you got to respect it. But that being said, they scored 15 points or less in 4 of their 10 wins. That is the most 15-point or less wins by a team since 1991. That is your 2020. That's your 2023 Iowa Hawkeyes. How do you, after 10 wins, can you honestly fire Brian Ferentz, Thor?
Well, he already walked away, so he solved it for him. But
I mean, come on, man, come on.
I feel bad for Brian Ferentz, and then also, with all the injuries, I don't know what else they were going to do. But yeah, Michigan, they, and then of course you have the Jim Harbaugh coming back thing, and Jim Harbaugh, I mean, he's going to want to. He is going. It's who is it? Joaquin Phoenix in Gladiator. Where he puts the thumb out and then he gets to decide who. I wouldn't want to be on the other sideline of this game. Because Iowa can only do one thing, which is run the ball mediocre-ish. Yeah. And Michigan knows it. And Jim Harbaugh's just been sitting in those hotel rooms the last 3 weeks, licking his chops to get back on the field. They are going to drop the hammer on Iowa. And as an Iowa grad, it brings me no pleasure to say, but that is what is about to happen.
Licking his chops and drinking whole milk and doing all that type of stuff as Harbaugh does.
That's
there
right.
You go. If you guys want more, you guys want to get prepped for what is coming up, the full preview show coming up this week. We got Thor, we got Mike Farrell, we got Scott Bogman breaking down the previewed conference championship. You have more solidified lines. Make sure you are locked into the College Football Game Day podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, and make sure youtube.com/betting pros. I keep screwing that up, but on the YouTube Betting Pros channel, so you don't miss the video, so you can get prepped. Plus, we still got another live stream coming up on Saturday for those conference championships, so make sure you are tuned in there. And really, we'll see where everything else lies. This is the final of the early lines into the season with the conference, but there definitely might be something in the future here for bowl games. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of it. And also make sure you download the Betting Pros app, iOS or Android, so you not only have all the lines at your fingertips, you also have all of the people like Thor. You can sync your own bets. You can lock in not only your bets, but you can see what Thor has got. You can tail them. You can see what lines were set. You can get notifications on certain markers that you want. Really, it is a crazy, crazy robust tool. So go and download it today. Betting Pros, iOS and Android store, wherever you got the apps. That's going to do it for the show. Thor, you can find on Twitter at ThorKU. Foton, CF Foton. I'm Chris Welsh on Twitter at IsItTheWelsh. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us and spending this season with us. Good luck in your bets. We'll talk to you later this week right here on Betting Pros. Bye, friends.